I'm not going to do this with you anymore. No.
This family thought they were grieving their dead grandmother, but the truth was far more disturbing, because for years, something had been quietly preparing their family for a terrifying ritual, and by the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late. There are families who grieve together, and then there are families who grieve alone, even while sitting at the same table. The Graham family belongs to the second kind. Annie Graham makes a living building miniature models, tiny houses, tiny rooms, tiny versions of real life. Inside those glass boxes, everything stays exactly where she places it. But her real life has never worked that way. When Annie's mother, Ellen, dies, the funeral is strangely crowded. Many of the mourners are complete strangers to Annie. She barely recognizes anyone there. Her mother was always secretive, and Annie never fully understood who she really was. But seeing all these unknown people at the funeral makes Annie deeply uneasy. Annie lives with her husband Steve and their 2 children. Peter is 16, a typical teenager who mostly keeps to himself. Charlie, however, is different. She's 13, quiet and distant from everyone around her. She spends most of her time drawing strange pictures in a sketchbook, and she often makes a strange clicking sound with her tongue. Charlie was always very close to her grandmother, much closer than Annie ever felt comfortable with. One night, Peter is invited to a party. Annie forces him to take Charlie along. At the party, Charlie is left alone while Peter talks with his friends. Eventually, Charlie eats a piece of cake, but the cake contains walnuts, something she's severely allergic to. Within moments, she starts struggling to breathe. Panicked, Peter rushes her to the car and drives toward the hospital as fast as he can. Charlie leans out the window, desperately trying to get air. Then suddenly, there is a terrible sound.
Charlie!
Peter stops the car. He sits there, frozen, unable to look back. After a long moment, he slowly drives home and goes straight to bed. The next morning, Annie walks outside, and what she discovers in the car changes everything. After the tragedy, the Graham house becomes painfully quiet. No one talks about what happened. Peter barely leaves his room. The guilt consumes him. He flinches at every noise and avoids looking anyone in the eye. Annie, on the other hand, becomes overwhelmed with grief. Sometimes she can't even look at Peter without anger showing on her face. Steve tries to hold the family together, but he believes problems can be solved through logic and conversation. Unfortunately, logic won't help them now. At a grief support group, Annie meets a woman named Joan. Joan is kind and understanding. She listens patiently as Annie talks about Charlie. Then Joan tells Annie something unbelievable. She says it might be possible to communicate with the dead. Annie doesn't believe in things like that, but desperation makes people try things they normally wouldn't. So Annie agrees to attempt a seance. One night, Annie gathers Steve and Peter around the table. Joan had taught her a ritual. At first, nothing happens. Then suddenly, objects begin to move.
Charlie, if you're in this room with us, I'm gonna have us all touch the glass.
The glass slides across the table. The air in the room feels different. And then Annie begins speaking, but the voice isn't hers. Steve immediately throws water on her to stop the ritual. The strange activity ends, but something else has already begun. After that night, Peter starts noticing strange things. Shadows moving where nothing should be. Figures standing silently in dark corners. Meanwhile, Annie becomes convinced that something followed them home. She begins seeing disturbing drawings appearing in Charlie's sketchbook. Symbols, strange faces, things she doesn't remember drawing. Terrified, Annie throws the sketchbook into the fireplace, but suddenly her own clothes catch fire. Panicking, she pulls the book out, and the flames on her body instantly stop. Annie begins searching through her mother's belongings. What she finds is horrifying. She discovers a photo album. In the photos, Ellen is surrounded by strange followers, people who look at her with complete devotion. One face stands out immediately: Joan, the same woman from the grief group. In another book, Annie finds disturbing information about an ancient demon king named Paimon. According to the book, Paimon requires a male host to fully enter the human world, and those who help bring him into a human body will be richly rewarded. Suddenly, everything begins to make sense. Ellen had been part of a cult, and Charlie was never meant to be the final host. In the attic, Annie discovers something horrifying: her mother's body, surrounded by strange symbols. It becomes clear that Ellen had been preparing this ritual for years, possibly even before Annie's children were born. Outside Peter's school, Joan is seen whispering strange words. Soon after, Peter suddenly loses control of his body during class. He violently slams his head into his desk, breaking his own nose. He had no control over it. Something else is manipulating him. Annie finally understands the terrifying truth. She tells Steve that the sketchbook is connected to her life. If it burns, she will die. She begs Steve to destroy it. Steve refuses to believe her. Desperate, Annie throws the book into the fire herself. But instead of Annie, Steve suddenly bursts into flames. As Annie watches, something inside her changes. Her expression becomes completely empty, as if she is no longer herself. That night, Peter wakes up and finds his father's body. Terrified, he runs through the house, but something is waiting for him. Figures appear in the darkness, silent, watching. Annie, or whatever is controlling her, begins chasing him. Peter runs to the attic, but Annie follows, holding a piece of piano wire. Peter escapes through the window and falls to the ground below. When he wakes up, something enters his body. Something that has been waiting for this exact moment. Peter slowly walks to Charlie's old treehouse. Inside, several naked cult members are waiting, including Joan. Charlie's crowned head sits at the center of the room. Joan places a crown on Peter's head. She kneels before him and calls him by a different name: Paimon. The Demon King has finally found his human host. The cult bows before him. Their plan, carefully prepared for years, is finally complete. The Graham family believed they were victims of terrible tragedies, but the truth is even darker. They were never meant to survive. Every loss, every argument, every moment of grief, it was all part of a design, a ritual carefully built in the shadows. And in the end, Ellen Graham got exactly what she wanted.